Sure. Here's section 1 of the script. You better have a damn good reason for dragging me here, I muttered, stepping into Grandpa's retirement home room. The place looked less like a peaceful retreat for the elderly and more like the aftermath of a frat party for geriatrics. The air smelled faintly of Bengay and cheap cologne, and the walls were plastered with photos of Grandpa in his youth, shirtless on a motorcycle, flexing his biceps next to a horrified goat, and standing triumphantly over a grill that was clearly on fire. Grandpa was sitting in his recliner, a sly grin on his face. He had that mischievous twinkle in his eye that always preceded trouble. "Took you long enough," he said, tossing a peanut into his mouth. "I thought I'd have to fake a heart attack to get you here." "Cut the dramatics," I said, kicking aside an empty can of beer labeled * retirement brew, strong enough to kill you. *. "What's so urgent?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was about to share state secrets. "It's Dolores. She left me." I blinked. "Dolores? Your girlfriend? The one who calls you her little sugar plum?" "Ex-girlfriend now," he said, bitterness creeping into his tone. "She dumped me for Harold." "Harold?" He spat the name like it tasted bad. "Who the hell is Harold?" Grandpa groaned, gesturing wildly. "He's new here. Some hotshot 72-year-old who thinks he's God's gift to women. Drives one of those fancy scooters with the cup holder. Damn thing has Bluetooth. And this has what to do with me?" "I need your help," Grandpa said, leaning back like he just delivered an Oscar-worthy performance. "We're gonna win her back." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice rising. "You dragged me here to play wingman for you at a retirement home? This isn't a joke, kid," Grandpa said, slamming his fist on the armrest. "Dolores is the best thing that's happened to me since I learned Viagra works better with tequila. I'm not losing her to that Botox buffoon." "Oh my God, stop!" I covered my face with my hands. "I don't need to know about your, whatever this is." Grandpa grinned, completely unbothered. "Love life? Romance? Sexual escapades? I'm begging you to shut up." But Grandpa wasn't done. He stood up, pacing the room with the fervor of a general planning a military invasion. "We're gonna take Harold down. First, we sabotage his shuffleboard game. Then we hit him where it hurts, his prune juice. And finally, the grand finale, karaoke night." "You're insane," I said flatly. "Insane in love," Grandpa countered, placing a hand over his heart. "And you're gonna help me, because you owe me." "For what? Do I need to remind you of who bailed you out after your accidental streaking incident at that football game? That was one time," I hissed. "And yet here we are," he said smugly. "Suit up, kid. We've got a mission." I sighed, realizing there was no way out of this. "Fine. But if we get kicked out of this place, you're not moving in with me." Grandpa smirked, grabbing a cane that he clearly didn't need. "That's the spirit. Now let me tell you about Harold. He's a slippery bastard, always strutting around like he owns the place. Thinks he's irresistible just because he plays the ukulele. The ukulele, can you believe it?" I snorted despite myself. "Sounds like a real menace." "Oh, you have no idea," Grandpa said darkly. "He's got these perfectly whitened dentures and a laugh that makes women weak in the knees. I don't trust a man whose teeth are whiter than his lies." I groaned. "This is going to be a disaster." "Maybe," Grandpa said with a wink. "But it's going to be our disaster. Let me know if you'd like section 2 next." The shuffleboard court was eerily quiet as Grandpa and I crept across it under the cover of night. He crouched, dramatically low for a man his age, clutching a stick of butter like it was a weapon. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" I whispered, eyeing the neatly lined pucks on the court. "Good idea? Kid, this is a great idea," Grandpa whispered back, his grin practically glowing in the dark. "Harold's shuffleboard supremacy ends tonight." With surprising agility, he began smearing the butter on Harold's custom-made shuffleboard pucks. "The trick," he explained, is just enough grease to make them slide out of control, but not so much that it's obvious. I folded my arms. You've done this before, haven't you? Once or twice, Grandpa admitted. Back in '78, a guy tried to steal my spot in a bowling league. Slathered his ball in lard. Best game I ever played. The next morning, we joined the crowd gathered for Harold's daily shuffleboard match. Dolores sat in the front row, looking like she'd walked straight out of a Hallmark card in her pastel cardigan. Harold was already on the court, flexing his disturbingly toned arms and flashing his unnervingly perfect dentures at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Harold called out, his voice smooth as melted butter. Prepare to witness greatness. I shot Grandpa a look. He winked. Harold's first shot was glorious, for about 2 seconds. Then the puck slid wildly off course, spinning like a drunk frisbee before clattering into the bushes. A murmur rippled through the crowd. What the devil? Harold muttered, staring at the puck like it had betrayed him. Dolores leaned forward, concern etched across her face. Are you all right, Harold? Grandpa snorted. Oh, he's fine, he muttered under his breath. Just choking on his own ego. But Harold wasn't ready to give up. He grabbed another puck and sent it sliding down the court with laser focus. It careened off the edge and crashed into the crowd, sending a bowl of pudding flying. The crowd gasped. Someone yelled, My tapioca! Dolores rushed to Harold's side, patting his arm. It's okay, Harold. Everyone has off days. Grandpa's smirk vanished. Off days? That man couldn't aim if his life depended on it. Harold turned to the crowd, raising his hands. A minor setback, folks. Just a fluke. As Harold fumbled through the rest of his match, the crowd's sympathy only seemed to grow. Grandpa seated beside me, muttering about how Harold was turning failure into a sympathy parade. He's like a damn Hallmark villain, Grandpa growled. Even when he loses, he wins. Later, during lunch, Grandpa unveiled the next phase of his plan. He slid a bottle of laxatives across the table like it was a spy gadget. Phase 2, he announced. I picked up the bottle, grimacing. You're kidding me. Do I look like I'm kidding? Yes. Constantly. Grandpa scowled. Just pour it into his prune juice when he's not looking. Why can't you do it? Because if Harold sees me near his food, he'll get suspicious. But you? You're a neutral party. An innocent bystander. I'm either of those things. Fine, Grandpa huffed. I'll do it myself. But if I get caught, you better bail me out like I did for you after that streaking incident. For the last time, that was one time. Grandpa sauntered over to Harold's table, clutching a tray of desserts like he was just being neighborly. Harold, my good man, he said loudly. Enjoying lunch? Harold looked up, flashing that insufferable grin. Why, yes, I am. Thank you for asking. Grandpa set down the tray with exaggerated care. I thought you might like some pie. Nothing beats pie after a hearty meal. Harold chuckled. How thoughtful of you. As Harold reached for a slice, Grandpa's hand moved like lightning, tipping the laxatives into Harold's prune juice. He covered it by dramatically adjusting the tray, knocking a napkin onto the table. Well, enjoy, Grandpa said cheerfully, retreating before Harold could say anything. We watched from a safe distance as Harold took a long sip of his juice, sighing contentedly. Grandpa grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. But instead of the chaos we were expecting, Harold stood up and announced, Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to propose a toast. Grandpa froze. What the hell is he doing? Winning, I muttered. Harold raised his glass, delivering a heartfelt speech about community, love, and the importance of regular digestion. By the time he finished, the crowd was practically in tears. Grandpa slammed his fork onto the table. How is he charming people while drinking poison? I shrugged. Maybe he's immune. Grandpa glared at me. Nobody's immune to laxatives. But as Harold strutted away, flashing Dolores a wink, it was clear our plan had backfired spectacularly. This isn't over, Grandpa said, his jaw set with determination. We still have karaoke night. Let me know when you're ready for section 3. Karaoke night at the retirement home was a bigger event than I'd expected. The lounge was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. Residents shuffled in, clutching songbooks and nursing drinks that smelled suspiciously stronger than apple juice. Grandpa adjusted his BOLO tie, his confidence returning in full force. "This is it," he said, rubbing his hands together like a supervillain about to unveil his master plan. "Tonight I remind Dolores why I'm the king of romance." "You're not nervous?" I asked, watching Harold chat with Dolores by the snack table. He had swapped his usual cardigan for a sequin jacket, and it was working. She laughed at something he said, her hand lingering on his arm. "Nervous?" Grandpa scoffed. "Kid, I was crooning to dames before Harold even knew how to spell croon. Watch and learn." The night began with a few warm-up acts, an off-key rendition of My Heart Will Go On, and a painfully slow version of Born to Be Wild, before Harold strutted onto the stage. He grabbed the mic with the confidence of a man who had clearly rehearsed in front of a mirror. "This one's for all the lovely ladies out there, especially Dolores." He winked. Grandpa's grip tightened on his chair. "That smarmy bastard." Harold launched into Let's Get It On, gyrating in ways that made me wonder if his hips were insured. The crowd went wild. Residents clapped, hooted, and whistled, some throwing what I hoped were clean handkerchiefs onto the stage. Dolores looked enchanted, her cheeks pink, as she swayed to the beat. Grandpa looked like he was about to explode. "He's turning this into a strip show. This is karaoke, not Chippendales." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. "You've got some stiff competition." "Not for long," Grandpa growled. As Harold finished his performance with a dramatic flourish, the room erupted into applause. He bowed deeply, blowing kisses to the crowd and tossing the mic back to the MC like a rock star. Grandpa stood abruptly, nearly knocking his chair over. "All right, it's time to show these people what real music sounds like." "You sure about this?" I asked, eyeing the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "Positive," he said, storming toward the stage. He grabbed the mic and cleared his throat. "This one goes out to the only woman who's ever made my heart skip a beat, Dolores." The crowd let out a collective ah, and even Harold looked mildly impressed. Grandpa nodded to the DJ, who queued up Unchained Melody. At first, it was magical. Grandpa's deep, gravelly voice filled the room, and for a moment, even I was moved. Dolores's expression softened, her eyes glistening. But then the second verse hit, and the mic cut out. Grandpa froze, tapping the mic with increasing frustration. "What the?" The MC rushed over, fumbling with the equipment. "Sorry, technical difficulties." Harold, ever the opportunist, seized the moment. "Looks like the universe has spoken," he said with a smirk, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Tough break, old sport." Grandpa's jaw tightened. "Universe my ass." Desperate to salvage the moment, Grandpa grabbed a spare mic, but his voice crackled and distorted through the speakers. The crowd laughed nervously, and I could see the panic rising in his eyes. "That's it," he muttered, abandoning the mic entirely. "Plan B." Before I could ask what Plan B was, Grandpa jumped off the stage, landing with a surprising amount of grace for a man his age. He marched straight up to Dolores, took her hand, and dropped to one knee. The room went silent. "Dolores," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I know I'm not the most charming guy here. Hell, I'm not even the youngest. But you're the only woman who's ever made me feel like the man I used to be. The man I want to be again. So, what do you say? Give me another chance?" The crowd gasped. Even Harold looked taken aback. Dolores blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she wasn't sure what to say. Finally, she smiled, a soft, bittersweet smile that made my stomach drop. "Frank," she said gently, "you're an incredible man. But I think we both know this isn't about me. You're chasing a memory, not a future." Grandpa's face fell, and for a second, I thought he might cry. But then he laughed, a deep, hearty laugh that echoed through the room. You're right, he said, standing up and brushing off his pants. You're absolutely right. Damn, you always were smarter than me. Dolores kissed his cheek, her smile tinged with affection. You'll always be my sugar plum, Frank. But I think it's time we both moved on. As she walked back to her seat, Harold stepped forward, looking smug as ever. Tough break, old sport, he said again. Grandpa glanced at him, then at me, then back at Harold. You know what? You can have her, Harold. But good luck keeping up with her. That woman's got more energy than a damn tornado. The crowd erupted into laughter, and for once, even Harold looked flustered. Grandpa clapped me on the back. Let's get out of here, kid. I think I've embarrassed myself enough for one night. Let me know when you're ready for Section 4. We left the lounge to the sound of applause and chuckles, the echoes of Grandpa's dramatic exit lingering behind us. He walked with his shoulders squared, but I could tell the rejection had hit him harder than he let on. As we strolled through the dimly lit halls of the retirement home, he broke the silence first. You know, kid, he began, hands shoved deep into his pockets. I think this is the first time in my life I've been dumped in front of a live audience. I snorted. Well, if it's any consolation, you handled it better than most people would. Grandpa chuckled, though it was tinged with self-deprecation. Better? I serenaded her, got booed by a microphone, and then got told I'm chasing ghosts. I might as well start writing greeting cards for Hallmark. I rolled my eyes. Come on, you have to admit you went out in style. Style my ass, he muttered. Harold's probably gloating all the way to his Bluetooth-enabled scooter right now. We passed a group of residents playing cards in the common room. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman in a leopard print scarf, called out, Hey, Frank! Nice pipes you got there. Too bad about the mic. Grandpa waved her off with a grumble, but I caught the faintest hint of a smile. See? I said. You've still got fans. Yeah, well, they're not Dolores, he said, his voice softening. We reached his room, and he pushed the door open, revealing the same chaotic mess I'd walked into earlier. He plopped into his recliner, staring at the wall of photos like they might offer him some kind of epiphany. You know, he said after a long pause, Dolores wasn't wrong. I've been stuck in the past for years. Chasing memories, trying to prove I've still got it. But maybe it's time I stopped looking backward. I raised an eyebrow. You're getting philosophical on me now? Don't get used to it, he said with a smirk. But yeah, maybe it's time I focused on what's ahead. Hell, there's a poker tournament next week, and I've still got a score to settle with Mildred after she cheated me out of $5 last month. There's the grandpa I know, I said, laughing. He leaned back in his chair, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. You know what the best part about getting older is, kid? What's that? You stop giving a damn about what people think. You mess up, you laugh it off, and you move on. Life's too short to hold on to grudges, or girlfriends who dump you for guys with Bluetooth scooters. I shook my head, grinning. You're unbelievable. Damn right I am, he said, grabbing a can of retirement brew from the side table and popping it open. He took a long sip, then raised it in a mock toast. Here's to moving on, screwing up, and making fools of ourselves. It's what makes life worth living. I grabbed a can from the table and joined him, clinking it against his. Cheers to that. For a while, we sat in companionable silence, sipping our drinks and listening to the faint hum of activity outside. I could hear the muffled sound of Harold's obnoxious laugh echoing down the hall, but for once, it didn't bother Grandpa. Eventually, he leaned forward, setting his can down and rubbing his hands together. All right, enough of this sentimental crap. I've got a new plan. I groaned. Oh God. What now? Don't worry, it's not about Dolores, he said, his grin returning. It's about Harold. I narrowed my eyes. What about Harold? Grandpa's grin widened, taking on a conspiratorial edge. Let's just say, I've got a friend who's really good at Photoshop. And Harold's about to star in some very unflattering retirement home posters. Grandpa. Oh, relax, he said, waving a hand. It's harmless fun. Besides, the guy deserves it for stealing my girl. This isn't revenge, it's character building. You're incorrigible, I said, shaking my head. And you love it, he shot back. Despite myself, I laughed. Because he was right. For all his antics, for all his stubbornness and chaos, Grandpa had a way of making life more interesting. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As I left the retirement home that night, I glanced back to see him settling into his recliner, humming a tune and flipping through a deck of cards. He was already planning his next big adventure, and I knew it wouldn't be long before he dragged me into it. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.